Good day, everyone. Today I'm talking to Usman Iftikhar, the one and only Usman Iftikhar, who is the CEO of Catalysr. Usman, good day, mate. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this interview session.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
And everyone, Usman is joining us today from Melbourne. And how is the weather down there in Melbourne, Usman?
It's pretty cold at the moment, to be honest. I would much rather be in Sydney or in Wollongong or somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably quite similar here as well. But I can see the sun is out and it's probably a little warmer than Melbourne, I would think. And Usman, can we dwell into the first question?
Yeah.
Usman, can you please share a little about yourself, the place you were born, your education, your passion, the things that you enjoy doing, and one thing that the public might not know about you?
Yeah, well, so I was born in Pakistan, and there's quite a few things that the public would not know about me. But I guess I've lived in. So my dad used to be a doctor in the Pakistan Army, and so we basically lived across different cities in Pakistan. So when I think about myself and my journey, I've been like an internal migrant, I would say, in different cities in Pakistan. So I've lived all over Pakistan when I was young, and I studied in different schools. Some of them army schools, some of them sort of like general private schools. And really, I guess like at that early age, I became really passionate about just helping people and serving people. And one of the things that you wouldn't know about me was that like my father was posted in Abbottabad, which was in the north of Pakistan, during an earthquake. And this was, I believe, back in 2005. It's such a long time ago now. And he was working in one of the sort of military hospitals there. And during this earthquake, it was really devastating. Unfortunately for Pakistan, it was like 8 point something, on the Richter scale. And I mean, I was 15-year-old. I was pretty young at that time. And I was sleeping when this earthquake hit. It was, I think, like 8 a.m. in the morning or something along those lines. And I remember waking up and going, well, what's happening here? Because I never saw an earthquake before, and I just like ran out and wanted to just be safe. And then like after a little while, I realized, okay, this is happening. But even after the earthquake, there's a lot of devastation, in the sort of like following days and months because electricity went down, communications went down, and around that whole area, every person who's either injured or deceased was being carried to this military hospital because this was like one of the ones that was closest to, I guess, the epicenter. So we really felt it. We were pretty lucky that we were safe. But my parents, so both of my parents are doctors, but my father was one who's in the army, so he was working in the hospital. My mother was enlisted as a volunteer sort of doctor and helping out. And then I was sort of responsible for managing the household. So I have three younger siblings, and at that time I was basically like taking care of them and sort of supporting them. And then also we used to live in an apartment building, so we were lucky that we were in the on the ground floor. And a lot of the people who were living in different sort of I guess stories were really scared because of aftershocks of the earthquake, and like it would happen again. And so a lot of them actually either camped outside in the sort of lawn, or they would come and sort of stay with us because they were a bit afraid of like going back to their house, which I guess again is a usual thing. So I was basically managing not only my siblings but also like managing the household in that time. And then I also went with my brother and like other siblings to the hospital, and also did some volunteering at that age, and was basically helping like different earthquake victims. There's a lot of sort of, I would say, donations that came through from all over Pakistan and internationally as well. Different things like food items and clothes and everything that was sitting there. And so I would just go with like other young people and just we'll sort out through these different items and just help people and give them those items. So that's a short story that I haven't sort of shared publicly, I don't think, in a long time, and definitely not in Australia. So yeah, like I would say that's probably my earliest memory of like doing something of service and volunteering. And I think that experience really personally shaped me to sort of like do the work that I do today.
Interesting, Usman. And it also sounds very scary to be actually in that situation. I think it just made you take hold of that situation and just do whatever you could, to the best of your ability in helping out and reaching out. And I think that you've carried that into probably Catalysr as well, isn't it? Because I see you doing a lot of work in free time and advice in others and all those kind of things. So I think that has come along with you, isn't it, into Australia as well, that charitable heart to help and to support and to nurture others.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things, right, where I mean, like I've sort of been reflecting a lot recently of, why do I do what I do and why do I care about certain things? And I think like, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is having that, I mean, from household, as you were sort of earlier talking about as well, that, like as you grow up, the family you grow up in and the sort of circumstances you are in really helps you or shape you as an individual. And so for me, I mean, like the fact that my parents were in doctors really helped to have that sort of caring and all that mindset. But also because I was traveling around so much, giving, basically learning from different people, learning from different cultures and backgrounds also helped me. And I think a lot of that sort of shows up in the work that I do now at Catalysr.
Good on you, Usman, and thank you for sharing that story. And moving on to our second question, Usman, can you please share about your work experience prior to you starting Catalysr in Australia?
So before Catalysr, I studied engineering in Pakistan, and then I worked in Pakistan as an engineer for a few months. Then I came here, and here in Australia, I did a master's in engineering and management. And then after that, I was doing a lot of casual work. Right? So I did not unfortunately get a job in Australia. So I did. I did casual work. I also did volunteering here. So at the time, I volunteered with an organization called the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, which is like this young people from different universities doing a fantastic job of, campaigning for, having a safe climate for us. And we went and met with different politicians, went with different banks, tried to, convince them, not to invest in fossil fuels because, we see it as being dangerous. And then I was also applying for work at the time and wasn't, being successful. And so that led me to directly start Catalysr. So I guess my sort of work experience, a lot of that is very informal and voluntary based one in the last sort of few years. And then obviously that then led to Catalysr. And then since then I've been working a lot of.
Good on you, Usman. Good on you. Thank you for sharing your story. And moving on to our next question, I think you touched on this in your answer. But can you please tell me, when did you start Catalysr and what was the inspiration behind this entrepreneurial venture?
So I started Catalysr, or I co-founded it in 2016. And the inspiration behind it was at that time, to be honest, I wasn't thinking big. I was just thinking of starting in my own, or basically creating my own job. So after working in, 7-Eleven, in BP, other sort of casual jobs, I personally was frustrated, not because there's anything wrong with those jobs, but for me, felt like I wasn't using, them basically reaching my best potential. And so I wanted to do something more meaningful, right? And I was applying for a lot of jobs online, like as a lot of other migrants do and international students do, where, have the resume that you send to every single person, going to a lot of expos. And, I actually lived in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Brisbane. So I just literally went around to some of the major cities in Australia to try and find work. I talked to a lot of people, went to a lot of different events and networking meetups and so on, but wasn't being successful, right? So all of that sort of frustration, I guess, led me to going, okay, well, the only other way that I see of getting something meaningful is to just create my own job. And I guess that was, the premise of starting something. And then I was lucky that I was searching for, how do you start a business again? I didn't really know how to do it. And was lucky enough that I found this program called School for Social Entrepreneurs that was running down in Parramatta that I applied to and got accepted. And they took a few young people who were interested in starting a social enterprise. At that time, I had an idea to start like a renewable energy company because that was something that I was interested in, passionate in, especially because of my engineering background, sort of like some activism and advocacy work in climate change. And through that, through that process of trying to start a startup, I did research, completely market research, and found that someone else was already ahead of me and had already started a similar idea recently. And so for me, it was like, well, there's no point in me trying to replicate that the same wheel. And so I might as well come up with something new and different. And I very vividly remember this, that I talked to one of our mentors in the program who said, hey, why don't you try and solve a problem that you've personally faced? And I've talked about it previously as well, that for me, when I thought about that problem, I sort of realized, okay, I face this issue of unemployment, particularly underemployment. A lot of immigrants face, a lot of students face, and that's where I saw there's an opportunity for me to start a business and help them. And so obviously I was a part of that market. I wanted to start my own business as a way to employ myself. And then I was in an incubator, and so literally, like I was just like connecting those dots and thinking logically the next few steps. It was like, well, wouldn't it be great if we had an incubator program specifically focused on migrants and refugees to help them launch their own businesses? Because that's not only a way for them to create their own employment, but also to use their skills. And just like it's a win-win situation for them, also for the Australian economy. So that was, I guess, the sort of the premise behind Catalysr, and it has sort of evolved over time. But like we still sort of, I guess, keep true to the same message.
Excellent, Usman. Excellent. And I mean, it's amazing that you actually, as an international student, you had that vision and passion, and you saw a problem and you kind of related it to yourself, and then you thought, okay, why not do this? And I mean, it's for a normal international student, let me honestly tell you, they just are coming to a new country, they're looking for accommodation, they're trying to adjust to the university life, they're looking for a part-time job. And then out of all that, to actually try to solve a problem, it's amazing. I mean, you come across as a person of real courage to look at the problem in the eye and try to find a solution for it. So good on you for doing it.
Thank you for saying that. And I would say it's again, at that time, I was honestly just frustrated and desperate, and I wanted to do something, anything that works, right? And so this was one of the, like now it seems like a very planned sort of model, but at that time it was basically shot in the dark, right? Where we were like, okay, well, nothing else is working, might as well try this. And so I would say that, like we were lucky. And one of the things I would say that we realized very quickly was that when we started Catalysr, so I also was lucky in a way that I found a co-founder during that program who was also really passionate about supporting migrant and refugee population, also interested in helping people sort of, I guess, utilize their potential. And he had a business owner accounting background, which came in really handy. His name is Jacob Muller. And we basically, and he also had some, I guess, connections with the local migrant some community in Parramatta that also came in very handy to help us with some of the initial funding, help us get set up and started. And at that time, when we were setting up, we honestly didn't know what we were doing. We just had a template that we took, after doing research and said, okay, an accelerator program, an incubator program would have these components. Why don't we build these components and just run it? So mentoring, some classes and things like that. And we would just pick up the phone and do like a lot of cold calls and talk to people and say, hey, well, we've started this new thing and we've got like all these people who are coming in. What are you interested in mentoring them in, like marketing or business model or whatever? And there's a lot of generous people at that early stage who help like give us free space in Parramatta, provide us with like mentoring and advice and so on, and also with our cohort. And then with one of our partner organizations, their community migrant resource center, they gave us access to some of their clients who, again, some of them who wanted to start a business, and we sort of selected the top 10 and supported them over a 2-month pilot program. So we tested this out, and again at that time we were like, okay, we don't know if this is going to work. If it doesn't work, we're just starting out, we're going to go ahead and do our own thing. But it's just a way for us to test things. And then through that test and through that pilot, we actually saw 3 of the 10 people start their business, and running, and some of them are running successfully even now. And so for us, even at that stage, to be able to help people to just finish the program and to learn something was a big achievement. But the fact that there were people who started a business, again, sort of speaks to the same point that, migrants have so much resilience, so much courage and resourcefulness that, people just need a little bit of support and someone to believe in them, and someone to just say, you can do it, and then they can do it. And like obviously we've improved our program significantly, and, you're in the program, so hopefully you can tell that. But it's around like doubling down on the stuff that that works, but also to create a community of support and networks, both within the sort of that community of migrant entrepreneurs, but also more generally a support system around them that can help them on an ongoing basis. Because this is not like a 3 months, 6 months journey. This is a very long term commitment to help people start a business and to nurture it and to then help them grow it. Because the ultimate goal for us is we want to create employment opportunities for people all around Australia, but particularly people who, otherwise might not get that. So in sort of like social enterprise landscape, we call this theory of change, which is, well, what is your theory? What is your sort of thinking? Like, how do you want to create change in the world? And for us, what that looks like is that we find really high-performing migrant refugee entrepreneurs across Australia now and help them to start their own business. And that could be a startup, that could be a social enterprise, that could be anything that they want to do that has some potential and promise and that has the ability to scale. And then essentially we want to help them in a way that they can then grow it and scale it so that then they can create a lot of employment opportunities and a lot of value for Australia. So I guess that's the theory of change. Oftentimes, we're not just supporting the first generation or like the sort of, just directly people who are benefiting from the program, but also like the second and the third order effects of like building the community and then building the economy as well.
Good on you, Usman. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Usman, moving on to our next question. Could you please share how Catalyslr's entrepreneurship program is different to other programs in Australia? And if I may, even the world?
So again, I think that's a great question, and that's a question that we should have always asked ourselves as well. Like, are we really different, and what is it that's different about us? I mean, there are a few sort of differences in terms of the program design. There are also some differences in terms of, I guess, like the stage that we operate as well, and who we're for. So I would say, firstly, we are at that pre-accelerator stage, and this is, I mean, not just in Australia but globally. A lot of the pre-accelerators that currently exist are basically organizations that help people from an idea stage to help build an MVP or an early sort of product that they can then test and get some feedback and value, or to see whether it's valuable or not, and put it in the market and so on. So there are not as many pre-accelerator programs in the world. There's a lot of accelerator programs that support people who already have started a startup, have got some traction, then get in there and then grow. But for us, we are at that pre-accelerator stage because that's where we think we can add the most value. But also that's where, I mean, there are university programs that exist, but there's not much else out there in the sort of private sector that exists within Australia, and also not heaps in the world as well. So that's one. And beyond that, I would say we have co-designed the program and tested it particularly with the migrant community within Australia. And I guess that's like one of the biggest strengths is, the mentors that we bring in. A lot of them have had experience of either being a migrant entrepreneur themselves or working with others. So that's like, that translates into it. We also have, like different master classes and content. We, like some of the stuff that we create where we think there's value, other stuff we curate from some of the best sources as well. We don't have to, again, reinvent the wheel. But then, like what we try to do is we try to get, that personalized experience where you've got this general idea and the foundations of what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, and then specific advice and mentoring and guidance to help you as a migrant entrepreneur in Australia, and things that are relevant from your mindset to, knowing and feeling the right kind of networks, to figuring out, how do you present yourself, how do you pitch. There's a lot of things that come into play that are specific for migrants, and I think that's where we really specialize.
Thank you, Usman, for sharing that. Excellent. And moving on to our next question is, Usman, what lessons have you brought forth from your previous work experiences into Catalysr?
So, as I said, like my previous work experiences, I had a lot of volunteering experience, right, which definitely helped in sort of like when we were setting up Catalysr. I also had an experience, this was more at university when I was in Pakistan. So again, I had the sort of opportunity to actually, through a friend of mine, find an organization called ISEC, which is one of the largest organizations, or youth-run organizations that helps young people travel to different countries and do exchange internships. Obviously, this is in the pre-COVID world when we could actually travel and get around. And the goal here is it was set up after the Second World War. We're trying to get young people going to different countries, building some relationships and so on. So like Bill Clinton and some of the other people like that have been a part of that organization when they were young as well, and they've gone to different countries and been participated. And so I got involved initially as an exchange participant, and I went to Indonesia when I was doing my engineering degree back in Pakistan. Did some sort of internship, some work there in the local communities and helping them, and doing some development work. Then I got back, then I did an internship, sort of management internship and a technical internship in Russia. So I actually went to Siberia and had some experience there. And sort of after coming back into Pakistan as a part of that organization, they have chapters in different universities across different countries. And they had local chapters in Pakistan as well, but there was no chapter within my university. So I went through, I guess, a sort of city chapter. And then I was actually tasked to set up a chapter for my university and to run it there. And so I basically designed the whole, I guess, all the sort of like legal documents, and we call them compendium. You can call it a constitution for your company. I did fundraising for it. I sort of convinced the university administration, recruited people who wanted to go on exchange programs, also figure out a way in which we can bring something with Pakistan. And so did all sort of like this work as a part of my, just I guess, like extracurriculars as a part of university. So I think that is one thing that has really helped me do, again, to do some of the work that I'm doing with Catalysr. But I guess another thing that I was doing at that time, again, as extracurriculars and not thinking too much about it, was participating in one of the more prestigious societies or student societies running in my university on drama and sort of culture and art. And that was also, it was a fun, activity, organization to be a part of, because, we would run these like big dramatic festivals and we'd bring people from across Pakistan to our university for like a weekend, and they will, do their plays and mimes and music and, gigs and all that sort of fun stuff. And so like, it was like organizing the logistics I was involved in, but also just, like public speaking and acting and all of that, which I think also helped me, again, like, sort of like create some of the influence and some of the work that we're doing now. So, when you look back, there's a lot of these threads that seem very distinct, then sort of, come together and then help you in the work that you're doing.
Usman, thank you for sharing that part of the story. And Usman, moving on to our next question, can you please share about the highs in your venture, Catalysr, and for you personally before the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world and Australia in particular?
Sure. We've been really privileged and humbled that, we've had so many opportunities, and I've personally had so many opportunities as a part of, this journey. So with, we've had various different awards and so on that have come through, but I would still say, and particularly media opportunities. Like I remember when, we started, ran our pilot, we actually got an email from ABC Lateline. And again, this was back in 2017 when we, when we really knew what we were doing. And they were like, we want to do like a proper show on you on the work you're doing. And again, we still hadn't really tested and proven our model to a larger extent. We just like ran one pilot program, but they heard about us from like one of our mentors. And they did like a 20-minute piece on ABC, right? So there's things like that, which was incredible. At that early stage. And there's since been, many different awards and support and sponsorship and so on that have come through. One of our sort of biggest partners have been IAG, the insurance company. They supported us for 3+ years. I worked with them when they were doing this research into migrant small business owners in Australia, but to be able to understand how big this market opportunity is and what's happening here, and also to sort of shed a light as well on like the contributions that migrant entrepreneurs make to Australia. So I was involved in that. And then, like one of the people who was our mentor, but also a researcher who's helping us with some of our impact analysis, actually went to Europe. So he was a professor in business at University of Sydney, and he went to Europe, and he also was involved in writing a global report or a policy guide on migrants and entrepreneurship for migrants and refugees for the UN. And again, I was invited to be one of the speakers and to help launch this policy guide with the head of UNHCR and the head of International Organization for Migration in Geneva back in 2018. So I've been very, very lucky and privileged to have been able to have some of these opportunities. I personally got an award from Prince Harry, which some people might already know, as like a Commonwealth Young Person of the Year, which is still that to this day I'm still like surprised of how that happened, because think about the sort of odds of getting that, like one out of 1.4 billion young people that live across 53 Commonwealth countries. That is, it's like you have to be really lucky to get there. So we've had amazing support along the way, and sort of more recently, I had an opportunity to go through with the AMP Foundation, and they've got a Tomorrow Makers program that have supported and funded us. We got an opportunity from Singularity University, which is in the US, to go there and to actually do like this freelance program at NASA. And again, like this sort of stuff out of my wildest dreams, right? Where you as an engineer think you want to do something cool and be involved in the space sector or be involved in some of this cutting edge technology. But I was there, working with some of the people and astronauts, which was amazing. And then coming back for the last couple of years, I've also been involved with the Westpac Social Change Fellowship, which is sort of taking me around the world and look at different ecosystems, what's happening there, and how can we bring some of those learnings back to Australia. I've been involved with the Obama Leadership Program across the Asia Pacific. So I had the opportunity and the sort of privilege to meet with President Obama and Mrs. Obama in Malaysia last year. And sort of most recently was at Stanford doing a course in social enterprise and learning more about, how to sort of set up social enterprise and how do you grow and scale them. So I know like there's quite a few things in there, but the reason why I mentioned that is because it's you can sort of like, look at this and compare it to someone who was literally 4 years ago just working at a petrol station, right? And I know there's so many international students out there who literally are going through what I've gone through without having enough money, without having, we just like, who've just come in, who have a lot of high hopes and dreams of what it's like to be successful in Australia. And like the reason why I'm telling you this is not to boast about who I am, but to actually genuinely say that if I can do it, all of you can too. So this is genuinely like, sharing that every single person, no matter what your background is, no matter where you're coming from, no matter what your sort of circumstances are, you can do this too. Because I think it's a message that doesn't often get repeated, right? Like often people look at, other people, success stories, and they go, okay, A, this has happened overnight. B, this is like this person had the money or had the resources or had, the connections or whatever to make it happen. I'm sort of telling you, yes, that does happen too, but there's you also, if you persist and if you have, the resilience and if you can sort of continue to do this, like the more you try, the more lucky you get. It's one of those things you have to be prepared to get lucky. But at the same time, like no matter where you're coming from, no matter what your background, you can also be successful and get some of these amazing opportunities. But you've got to have that self belief and continue to try.
That's very encouraging, Usman. And it's such a great thing, like in such a short span of time, the number of achievements that you had, and Catalysr had is just amazing, isn't it? And I guess in some ways it's a validation from the market that this is what we need in Australia. And you have actually shown Australians, I think, I mean, there's definitely a lot of people that needs to get this information too, but you've basically shown Australia and literally the world, I would think that, the potential that is in the international community or migrants who are coming into Australia. And that's very encouraging. And I think a lot of people out there would look up at you as an example, and say, okay, if Usman could do it, we need to try and we need to persevere in our vision or goal. And I think it's such a great encouragement, Usman.
And thank you, and I'll sort of say thank you for having me, and thank you for asking these questions as well. As I said, like I've sort of shared my story in so many different platforms, but I haven't gone to this detail, or haven't gone to the sort of like I guess some of my personal journey before coming to Australia as well. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to really appreciate it.
Thank you, and Usman, moving on to our next question. So when the pandemic hit Australia, what were the steps you took to mitigate its effect on Catalysr?
So I guess you're an example of that on a personal level because you're participating in our program right now. That is a response to COVID-19. So we look, COVID-19 has affected everyone, right? And it has been really unfortunate, right? For a lot of people, they've lost their family members, they've lost their lives. I've still got close family members who got contracted COVID-19 back in Pakistan. And so it has been, it has been a terrible time for a lot of people. And it's also been like, really distressing for like millions of people around the world who have also lost their employment or lost their businesses, and continue to do so over the next few months and years. And so it has been pretty devastating for a lot of people, right? I mean, for us, we were also impacted. Some of our alumni got impacted as well because, like they're running businesses that unfortunately were industries that couldn't work because, for example, in travel or some of the other places where, if you can't travel in the sort of current environment, then like the businesses that rely on that would just won't work. But there's other businesses that have also, I guess, benefited from this sort of environment because they were like online and tech startups who actually, were trying to get more and more market share. But this has basically meant that they, were able to do that a bit quicker. So it's been a bit of a balance there. Then for us, from a program perspective, we, initially we were like, a lot of the programming that we do is very much experiential and face to face. And so there's a lot of community building and learning and relationship building that happens as part of the program. And it's really hard to do that online, right? So you would know it really well that that's super hard. And so what we've tried to do is try to, keep some of that element to do it over Zoom and online. And so we've like, redesigned the program in a bit to do it. And that's what you're going through as well, yourself, Tony. Hopefully it works, but we also understand its limitations, and like we can't wait to get back to like some sort of a normal situation where we can sort of continue to see each other, people face to face. but I would say this, that I think what it has also taught us is, like that there's a lot more that we can do in terms of scaling and growing. And there's a lot of benefits of having online programming that we thought about implementing in the past, but didn't because, we didn't have a need to. But also I guess the market wasn't there. So, we tried some online experiments even in the early days. What we found was the engagement wasn't the same. But given that now everyone is at home, everyone's just sort of online, like our program has had much higher engagement online. And so moving out of COVID, what we will sort of continue to do is we'll have some of the online elements like masterclasses, for example, that can be run asynchronously, but there's stuff where there's a lot of value to be added in like building that face-to-face community and having that physical interaction. That's what we will have face-to-face. So I guess we will keep some of the good things that we've learned during this pandemic from like the online version, but then also like some stuff that we know is absolutely essential for people to have that human connection as well that we had from the pre-COVID times as well.
Excellent, Usman. Excellent. And that's very good to hear. And Usman, moving on to our next question. So moving forward, what are your plans for Catalysr?
That's a last question because there's a lot of things that we're planning at the moment. One of the things that we want to do is, so we've been running this sort of 4th anniversary now, and we've been like, for the most part, we've been like, going year after year, trying to, like improve our program and get things better. But now we've got to a stage where we've been thinking since the, end of last year, like thinking about scale and growth. And so over the next few years, we want to grow in different cities. And actually, I can sort of share this with you and your sort of audience as well, that like we're planning to support 4,000 sort of migrantpreneurs over the next 5 years, and want to be in 10 different cities around the globe. How we do that? That's the stuff that we're working out at the moment. So we're planning on, like working with different partners and organizations, and sort of like our next port of call is going to be, looking at New Zealand as a country, and we already have some sort of like relationships that we are nurturing there, and then, moving with other countries from there. The second thing is on top of that is we'll continue to run our sort of existing programming, but then we'll also add a fund. And so this is something that I'm personally doing, is I'm participating in a program called VC Catalyst at Melbourne University, and they're a institute which supports people who want to set up their own VC fund to have this experience of learning from investors and VCs for a couple of weeks, and then you get paired to one of the partners at a big VC fund who helps you and mentors you to help you set your own fund. So that's something that I'm also going to be doing, sort of like September, October onwards as well. And that was planned earlier in the year, but due to COVID, that has been postponed, unfortunately. And then for me and for Catalysr longer term, our sort of goal is that we really are looking at, well, how do we, look at this big issue of migration and not only just change, like the economic situation, but also the hearts and minds of people. And so in this sort of like, mid to long term, like 5-10 years, our goal is to really be a significant partner with government, with corporate organizations, to be able to be a significant partner in the economic recovery for Australia, for other countries as they sort of come out of COVID, and be helping in creating businesses and then as a result jobs. And then longer term, so what I'm really personally interested in, and this is something that want to take Catalysr towards as well, is the issue of climate migration. So we know climate change is one of the biggest issues that we're facing as a society, and one of the issues that people often don't talk about is like how big of that impact that will have on migration. So I sort of learned from this from Singularity University around like how do you think big and be ambitious. And so for me, looking at climate change, there's research that shows that from Cornell University back in 2017 that we could have up to 2 billion sort of climate migrants, climate refugees. By right now, we have like 21 million sort of refugees, about 250-ish million migrants in the world, and so that number basically becomes 10 or 100x in some cases, and so that's really, really large. And as a globe, we are still struggling to help displaced people, to help people with migration, with identity issues, with economic integration, with jobs and business and all of that. And so again, I'm not claiming that I'm solving all those problems personally, but I want to be involved in like getting people to think about that long-term future and what can we do to prepare for it. And how do we think about migration differently in the 21st century? Right? So we have been like humans started, and we were all in Africa, then everyone sort of like went around to the rest of the world. And this migration has always happened. Sometimes it has been good, other times it has had negative impact as well. So I've looked at some of the history of migration. What I'm really trying to get to is how do we change the way we view migration and the way we look at each other, because at the end of the day, we all say the same people, right? But oftentimes, we forget that, especially looking at what's happening right now in the world and so much division that we have. What are the different ways in which we can come together as a society and as a community to try and support each other, whether you're a migrant, whether you're local, and what are the new ways in which you can have that new social contract.
Excellent, Usman. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's very encouraging. Thank you. Moving on to our next question. If you look back to the time from when Catalysr commenced operations, what would you have done differently and why?
So if I knew what I know now, I would have probably started Catalysr also with an investment or a VC fund, because I think one of the things that we've seen from our team struggle with, but also just generally migrants struggle with, is funding and investment. And so, I didn't have the funding myself, or Catalysr didn't have the funding itself to give out. But in an ideal world, if we had the funding or had some of the networks, I would have set up with a VC fund in the beginning, because that would have meant that we would have invested in some of the ventures that we've upstart, and that would have helped them grow much more quickly. But having said that, we saw on that pathway and want to create it now. But it's one of those things that it's hard to tell whether that would have been successful, because now that we've got some runs on the board, we've got a bunch of startups that we help support that are doing well. It's easier to make that argument. At that time, we didn't have the same amount of data. We only had secondary data, but first primary data and our own capability. So I guess it's probably a good thing that we didn't have access to money that we would have just invested in different people when we didn't know what we were doing. But if in an ideal situation, if I knew everything that I know now, we would have also started with a fund as well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Usman. And Usman, moving on to our last question. What are the life and business lessons that you would like to share with someone who's planning to start a venture like Catalysr in Australia?
I don't know, if they're planning to start a venture like Catalysr, I would say don't do it. It's not easy, but if you're, for anyone who wants to really start any venture, right, whether you're starting a small business or a startup, it doesn't really matter. I think there's some of the lessons are more timeless and apply to everyone. And others are obviously specific to your industry and what you're doing. And so the ones that are, I would say, timeless is it always takes longer than you think. I guess this is a lesson that I've learned on a personal level, that, when you're starting out, particularly younger entrepreneurs, you've got this thing, I'm able to do this in a year or 2 years or 5 years. Oftentimes it just takes a bit longer, right? So, for us to even find a business model, it would take 3+ years. But that doesn't mean that we didn't get started and we didn't, go in that paralysis analysis loop. So one thing is, it's really important to know that, and to, I guess, have the patience that's required to be an entrepreneur, and to keep persevering. And that doesn't mean that you go with the wrong idea, right? So you need to know whether this works or not. But for it to actually work and scale and grow to the potential that you think it is, it will definitely take, at least 7 to 10 years. Realistically speaking, it could even take longer. So if you are not in it for the long haul, don't do it. And I know that's one of those advice that I can be very frank about, because this is something that something that I've learned, that there's some people who just get into it for 2 months or 3 months, and then they realize, okay, this is not for me. And then they just so it's really important that you know why you're doing it, and focus on that why and that purpose behind it, and have a really strong enough reason why you want to start a business. Because if once you start it, then you have then there's a lot that depends on you, right? I guess the other thing that I've lesson that I can sort of share with people is it's really the whole what startup is, or what a business is basically a good business is a learning machine. So you want to create something that is learning and consistently growing, and that's a culture that you want to create, right? So you've got to have that focus on learning from day one, for yourself, for your team members, and look at different opportunities for learning and training and growing, and basically create that culture that people want to learn and want to improve. Because if people improve individually and as a collective, then that helps you as a team and as a company to really grow together. So that's one thing that I would also say add. Then I would say be ready for failure, and use failure as an opportunity for learning. I guess this is one of those other things where, a lot of people talk about it, but it rationally, you can understand that, yes, I should be okay, ready to fail and learn. But emotionally, it's really, really hard to keep facing rejection and to keep facing disappointments and still keep going. So I guess it's super important to sort of like, understand that and to continue to grow in that, to be able to understand failure and to continue to do that. And then also, I guess, figuring out a way in which you can become a better communicator. So I think this is something that, like for a lot of us, we talk to each other, we tell stories and all of that, but like it's important to improve your storytelling and improve your communication skills as a leader and as an entrepreneur, because you want to, attract investors, you want to attract team members, you want to attract, the broader community, media, everyone, and you will have to tell a lot of stories and a lot of communication. So really, really try and get good at that. And then I guess the sort of final thing is, and this is like, I really have a very sort of strong obsession with what you're doing. Because if you're not obsessed, there's going to be someone else who's going to be doing it better than you, right? So you need to have that mindset. Okay, this is something that I'm going to do, and that's your singular focus, and you're going to spend a lot of time and energy on that, and keep doing that for the long term.
Excellent, Usman. That's very encouraging. There's so many takeaways for people. I would think, one is like, being passionate about, what you're doing, have a passion. I think sometimes entrepreneurship people can confuse that it's a money-making, option. It could be, but I think you need to have the passion to solve a problem to start off with and then persevere. And I think you also touched on the point of being agile, be open to change, be open to accommodate challenges, be open to iterate or pivot if there is a necessity to do that. And I think that basically keeps the doors open, to look for opportunities and build partnerships and relationships as you move forward. So there's a lot of takeaways from what you have shared, Usman. And I think one thing, I'm also passionate about, Usman, is international students in particular and migrants in general. The reason being, I think in Australia you have a lot of international students coming in who are spending money to study at the universities in Australia. They spend money in Australia, and sometimes, because of lack of visa regulations or opportunities, they end up going back. But then, what I think Australia forgets to understand is that these international students, many of them would have had work experiences in the past. They would have worked in different countries and different cultures. So they're also cognitively diverse in the way they look at things, and I think Australia would be far better off if we could give these international students opportunities to, hopefully if they are entrepreneurs, an opportunity to actually start their businesses or bring those ideas into a business model in Australia, because in the long term, that would definitely create more opportunities for Australia, because it could be the jobs, you never know how big that business idea can be scaled. So I think there's a lot of potential in that, and I'm really proud that Catalysr is actually enabling migrants to actually start that journey. At least give them an option to actually explore it if there is opportunity or potential in the areas they're sharing. So Usman, we really thank you for taking a stand, for not giving up, despite the challenges that you would have faced in your journey, but persevering in your journey and being an example for all of us to look up to and say, if Usman could do it, I think we can too. And Usman, on that note, I just want to thank you for all that you're doing, the inspiration that you are to a lot of us, and we wish you the very best into the future with Catalysr.
Thank you very much, Tony, and thank you for having me. And I sort of completely agree with you on this, right? Where that absolutely Australia has so much potential, and international students have so much potential when they come here, and there's so much to offer. And yes, like Australia looks at it as like a business rather than industry, which is international education, but like it's such a unfortunate situation where a lot of the people that lost, or a lot of that talent is just being lost by not capturing the value. So just like it's like like Australia is making that investment and supporting a lot of the international students and helping them understand the culture and being here and study and get some of the amazing best education in the world, and then just basically letting them go. And when if you sort of like look at some of these sort of case studies and sort of follow people's trajectories, even a lot of the international students that have gone overseas to their own countries or other countries that they sort of like stayed in, are also doing amazing things, right? So it's not just here in Australia. And so I think that you're right, Australia has a big economic opportunity if we want to take it, to actually focus on supporting international students and like basically keeping the best people here rather than just letting them leave. And so instead of making it harder for international students to find residents and do million visa applications, Australia should make it like so much more easier to settle in here, because I think it's like just they help in creating job opportunities. They help create so much value, which is good for everyone in Australia, not just for them. So thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you, Usman. All the best, man. Thank you.